Every day there's another horror movie being made and eventually released. Because of this constant wheel of production, it can be hard to keep up with what is worth diving into and what should be watched later. Thankfully, Punk Rock Horror Podcast is here to help by bringing you reviews of some of the latest horror films. In 10 minutes or less, I will be giving you the pros, the cons, and letting you know if Freaky is a Friday night must-watch, rent, or if it should be watched later and swapped with a different movie. My name is Juan, and this is Freaky in 10 minutes or less. Freaky is directed and written by Christopher Landon, who's known for other films like Happy Death Day to You and Paranormal Activity: The Marked Ones, and co-authored by Michael Kennedy. It also features actors Vince Vaughn as the Butcher and Catherine Newton as Millie. The film follows Millie, who serves as our main protagonist, a 17-year-old in high school who ends up becoming the next target of the Butcher. In a twist of fate, Millie ends up switching bodies with the Butcher and only has 24 hours to switch back before she's trapped. An obvious parody of the plot of Freaky Friday, the movie does a good job at making its own mark on the body-switching theme. However, this is one comedy horror film that might not be favored for those who are hoping for something more intense and gorier. Speaking of gore, the movie does justice to the slasher genre by bringing in a decent amount of practical effects for its bloodier kill counts, such as the one scene where someone gets cut in half with a table saw, or the scene where someone shatters to pieces from being frozen to death. However, the film isn't all blood and guts, as Vince Vaughn brings a great comedic nature to his role. At this point, being a veteran with comedic roles, he is very much in his element of playing a role that at first doesn't appear it would work, but ultimately does. Throughout the film, he acts as if his body is possessed by a 17-year-old girl, which even on paper does come off as odd and a little creepy, and only for which would in a horror film does make sense. Vince does great at executing the role he is in. There are moments that are meant to be creepy, such as the scene where Millie, still inside the body of the Butcher, confesses her love for her boyfriend in the backseat of a car, and Vince Vaughn, to his credit, does great at delivering not just this scene but also delivers on the humor that he brings to the table throughout the film. And credit must go to Catherine Newton as well, since she not only brings an excellent unsettling nature to her role, but complements the humor and horror throughout, without needing to break character for a joke, or in this case, kill to land. You can definitely tell she has done her research for the film, considering that in most slasher films, the killer doesn't do a lot of talking and instead lets their actions speak for them. Catherine does fantastic at capturing this element with her character, since her physical appearance isn't meant to be imposing or intimidating, but still delivers on the intimidating aspect of how she moves and carries the character throughout the film. However, there are some parts that hold this movie back. Obviously, the film is meant to be more of a comedic horror film, so the amount of scare factor is at best minimal. So if you were hoping for something to terrify, this might not be up your alley. Since the film is supposed to have more of a comedic edge to it, some horror fans might find themselves more annoyed by the jokes throughout the film. Scenes where it's just loud noises and heavily relied upon the physical comedy aspect of them in order to balance, does leave the viewer with wanting the scene to just move on to the next gory kill. And really that's what hurts the movie the most, is the lack of substance throughout. Admittedly, this is just meant to be a easy to digest comedy horror film, and although it does succeed with what it's aiming for, it does feel like more could have been done with its premise. At times, it feels like it's playing it safe and relies on its gore effects to try and balance with a shock factor. This and the fact that it could have continued with a fresh take on the body-switching theme leaves the story feeling like it took a backseat to the humor throughout the film. And on top of that, the humor was either a hit or miss, which is a shame because it feels like it was more of a horror movie made only for profit without much heart put into it. That in itself can be subjective, however, since everyone has different reasons for investing in a horror film. That being said, we don't want to discourage anyone who has had an interest in this film. If at the end of this review you still want to check this one out, we encourage you to do so. Just be aware it may or may not be as tame as other comedy horror films that have been out for a while now. To wrap up this review, what holds the movie back are scenes of humor that might entertain mostly a younger audience. This, along with a severe lack of scare factor and predictable storyline, does not leave much for a surprise throughout the runtime of the film. We rate the gore and blood at 3 out of 5 buckets of gore. The film itself is a good film for those who want to either get more into horror, are just looking for a calmer type of slasher film that is easy to digest, or so they can watch with someone who is ready for that next step in a somewhat gorier film. Personally, this is a great movie for me since horror movies in general make me a bit squeamish. That being said, we rate the movie as a rent or watch later. Please like and subscribe to Punk Rock Horror Podcast here on YouTube, and for more horror content, check out prhp Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, where we come out with a new video every few weeks. My name is Juan, and I will catch you next time.